Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Project Success Cooking Certificate online. In case we haven't met before, in case you forgot, my name is James. I work for Project Success, which is why I'm wearing this Project Success t-shirt. If you're not familiar with Project Success, it's kind of weird that you're following us on Instagram or YouTube, but that's all good. We're a youth development nonprofit based in Minneapolis. And up until recently, we would have a meeting of our cooking certificate every Wednesday night. And teenagers who were part of the program attended Minneapolis Public Schools and were part of the Project Success Partner Schools. And they would learn how to cook with us from 6 o'clock until 8 o'clock in the evening every Wednesday night. But since we haven't been able to get together, we've been meeting instead via YouTube Live, Instagram Live. And so tonight, we're going to have another meeting where we cook another dish. I want to say a quick shout out to the folks who I know have been watching loyally week in, week out, and the folks who I know who are joining us tonight. So quick shout out to Bryn and her family who are watching and cooking along with us. Bryn makes her own cooking videos, which we hope to be able to check out and maybe even share with you soon. Also, I know that Tanavia is watching tonight. Shout out to Tanavia. Shout out to Mai tonight. Shout out to Chimeng, who are going to be cooking along with us. If you'd like to cook along with us, you're more than welcome to. You can find the ingredients for what we're going to be cooking tonight at the Project Success Launchpad website, which all students of the Project Success Institute have access to. Just check your emails, you'll find it. And we'll also be posting this video later on at that exact same website, so you can check out what we do later on if you would rather cook with us then. If you do happen to cook along with us tonight, then be sure to take pictures and video and stuff like that. Share it with us on either Instagram or send me an email or something like that. We would love to see what you come up with. All right, let's get started. Last week, we made part one of a two-part series on ramen. Ramen is a staple for so many folks. It's something that a lot of people eat, particularly when they don't want to spend a lot of money. You can just head to the grocery store or even the corner store, and you can find some cheap, dried ramen noodles, and if you use a little flavor packets, then you can have yourself a meal in 3 minutes tops. However, there are ways of making those ramen noodles even more delicious and possibly a bit more nutritious as well. So last week, we prepared a miso pesto ramen. This week, we're preparing a ginger scallion ramen. Both of these come to us from the Bon Appetit website and YouTube channel. Highly recommend following. Both of these recipes come to us by way of Andy Bargani, but we are tweaking them just a little bit, and we are adding one of my favorite ingredients, which is a soft-boiled egg as well. So let's get started. The first thing that we're going to do is we are going to get our noodles cooking. So we're going to take a pan. Any size pan will work, so long as you can fill it up with enough water to cover your noodles. Now, the noodles I'm using this week are these instant lunch noodles right here. You've probably seen them in the store before. Maybe you're using Top Ramen, maybe you're using some other kind of ramen noodle. One thing I will say is that if you get the kind like I got, then you're going to have to rinse them out. I had to rinse mine out because they already have some of the powder and like in my case, a little bit of corn and stuff like that, just sitting on top. So I just took a colander like this one and I just rinsed them. So now they are mostly rinsed of that flavor, and whatever isn't rinsed out hopefully will taste good with whatever we prepare today. So I'm going to take my pot. I'm going to fill it about halfway with water. Then I'm going to add some salt. As we talked about last week, you want to salt the water for your noodles until the water tastes like the ocean. That's what you're aiming for. So I'm going to stir up the salt in my water. Give that a taste. Yep, that tastes like the ocean to me, so that will do. So now I'm going to cover that, because if I cover water while it's boiling, it'll boil more quickly. And that's the wrong burner. I do that every single time. There we go, we're in business. I'm going to keep an eye on that. Once it boils, we're going to throw in our noodles. Okay, so now that the water is going, we are going to mince the key ingredient for today's recipe, which is scallions or green onions. These are mine. I've had them for more than a day, so they've already started to wilt at the end a little bit, which is always kind of annoying. If you want to get your green onions to last a little bit longer, you can take a little glass of water, fill it up halfway, and then put them in like it's like it's flowers or something. Ultimately, they would become flowers if you left them in there for long enough. And it will keep them fresh for just a little bit longer, not that much. Okay, so I've already rinsed these, so they are ready to mince. I am not going to cut these the way that we would ordinarily cut scallions. Typically, when I am chopping scallions, I am only chopping them so that they are little discs, but today we're mincing them. We're going to get them really small. So I'm going to start by chopping off the ends. There we go. The next thing I'm going to do is, using the claw technique, I am going to chop the scallions so that they are in little discs, and then I'll make a pile of them and then chop them again. Keep on going until they're minced. So the claw technique, if you've never heard me use that phrase before, is just a way to protect your fingers from getting chopped at the fingertips. Ultimately, if the knife blade is going to make contact with any part of your hand, you want it to be your knuckles. It's just safer that way. So I'm using sort of a lever motion here. I'm taking the tip of my knife and I am placing it down on the chopping board. Then I'm putting my other hand here in some cases so that I can do it like this. But in this case, I'm holding onto it like this and I'm sawing up and down. I'm going to keep on doing this until I've chopped all of my scallions. And sometimes you'll only use one part of the scallion, like the white part or the green leafy part. In this case, you're going to use the entire thing. Lots and lots of scallions. That's the main ingredient. And if I didn't mention it before, the temperature that we have our water on over there is high, so that way the water won't boil. We'll know that it's boiling, of course, because it'll be bubbling and rolling. You heard me mention the sea before. It'll look like a stormy, stormy sea. Okay, I'm just about done there. And what's left is slimy and kind of gross, so I'm not going to use. Okay, so now that I've got my scallions chopped like this, I am going to chop them again. So I have them in a pile. And actually, I like this knife, but I'm going to use a bigger knife for this. I just kind of want a longer blade. And so now I'm going to use that V technique, right? So I'm making a V with this hand as I place it on top, protecting my fingertips, and roughly chopping them again. There's no secret to this. It just takes a while. You can think of this kind of like the way, we're going to be doing it later, but kind of like the way that we mince garlic or ginger. Those are not typically things that we keep in big pieces. Just kind of a pro tip. You do keep your garlic in bigger pieces and your ginger in bigger pieces if you know that you're going to be putting them into hot oil right away. Because if you put tiny pieces of ginger or garlic into hot oil, then they will become charcoal within about 45 seconds. But we're actually going to be cooking our ginger and our garlic and our scallions today in a sort of a surprising way. So they can be small. We want them to be small. The chef who came up with this recipe, Andy Borgani, you heard me mention him before, he said in his video about this that this is a meal that you prepare when you know that you're going to be eating alone, but it's probably not a meal that you would prepare if you were on a first date. Because your breath will smell like green onions. It's going to be a powerful smell. However, within the video, they said something that I'd never heard before, which is that Eating fresh fruit is one way of freshening your breath if you've had something sort of stinky like the scallions that we are preparing right now. So there's a pro tip for you, a breath tip for you if you like. All right, so my green onions are chopped, my scallions are chopped, same thing. Next, we're going to work with our ginger. So here's my ginger. You want about this much. I don't know if you can see. There you go. There you are. About that much ginger. I am going to chop the ginger so that each one of the little tentacles is cut off. And then the way that I'm going to get rid of the external skin, I'm going to do this in front of the camera, I'll clean it up later, is I'm going to use a spoon here. So you scrape like this until it comes off. That way you don't lose quite so much of the ginger. It's going on my floor. Hopefully it's going on your cutting board. I'm going to finish it over here. I just wanted to see what I was doing. This is the time when I should have worn shoes, but I'm wearing a pair of my favorite green socks. So they're going to be ginger green socks. And our water is boiling over here. So it's time for me to add my noodles. So I'm adding 3 packets worth of noodles. You can add however many you like. It depends on how much you like noodles. We don't have to cook these for very long. Not long at all. I am going to, what I did with my lid there is I didn't cover the entire thing. I sort of kept one lip of the pan open. So that way some of the steam can escape and we don't boil over. I'm going to bring down the heat. Yeah, keep on twisting the wrong knob. I'm going to bring down the heat to about a medium low. And I'm going to set my timer for, I think, 4 minutes will do the job. Ramen noodles are not a noodle that you have to cook for a long time. Let's get back to getting the skin off of the ginger root. There are quicker ways of doing this. If you've been to the Institute before, you know that. You can just chop off the skin, but I want to use as much of this ginger as I can. It's the kind of thing that would make fascinating television if I could actually put it in front of the camera. But for the moment, you're just going to have to listen to my scintillating voice. Can voices be scintillating? I don't know. I love the smell of ginger. It's one of my favorite smells. You can tell when a restaurant is going to be a restaurant that I like because as I go past it, if I'm walking past it on the street, I can smell that ginger. One of the things I'm grateful for right now, I'm not much of a coffee drinker, but I like the smell of coffee beans. It reminds me of when I was a kid, growing up in England, downtown Bristol. There would be a coffee shop downtown that would roast their beans, and you could smell that as you walk down the main street. So it's a really nostalgic smell for me. And there's a Dunn Brothers just down the street from where I live, and they do the same thing about when I go out for my morning run. And I just love that smell. So coffee beans and ginger, there you go. All right, so I've got most of the skin off my ginger root there. Now I'm going to cut it into discs. Trying to protect my fingers as I go. And once again, once I've cut all of those into discs, I'm now going to mince it. So I'm going to go back to my pile and using the V technique with my left hand, it might be the right hand for you if you're left-handed, I'm going to mince this. It'll be sloppy at first, don't worry. Eventually it'll become nice and small. When you watch real chefs mince, it's like a miracle how fast they can go. I'm not there yet, but give me some time. Sometimes people wonder if it's too late to get into cooking, and I don't think it ever really is. For years and years, I only cooked about 10 different dishes, and those were the things that my mom taught me to cook when I was a kid. And it wasn't until I was in my 30s that I decided I wanted to add to my repertoire. I wanted to add to the things that I knew how to cook. And so I signed up for one of those meal services. Some people use HelloFresh or whatever, but I didn't like the idea of having my groceries delivered to me. At that time, it wasn't as important that we stay out of grocery stores for as much time as we can. So I found this other one where you could choose the recipes you wanted to cook, but then it would give you a shopping list, and then you went and got the groceries yourself, which saved a lot of money. And I learned how to cook a bunch of things I've never learned how to cook before. The one that I used is called Meal Lime. So that's meal, like a meal, and then Lime, as in the green fruit that's kind of sour. And through that, I learned how to cook tons of things that I'd never learned how to cook, and it taught me a bunch of techniques that I'd never learned before either, that now I use to prepare all sorts of different kinds of dishes that I'd never used. So it's not just an endorsement of Meal Line, it's mainly an endorsement of learning how to cook at any time in your life. So maybe right now, if you're a teenager, if you're in high school, you can build some of those foundational skills, but if you decide to come back to it later on, it's never too late. It's never too late, really, for most things. All right, let me check on my noodles. They're looking pretty good. So I'm going to remove my noodles from this hot water. And ordinarily, I would just drain them using a colander, but I'm not going to make the same mistake that I did last week. Last week, if you were watching, I did that. And then I remembered that I was going to cook some soft-boiled eggs as well, using the same water. And so I had to refill the water, and it took extra long. This week, I'm not going to make that mistake. So I'm going to grab a bowl. Let's see, what bowl will I use? I think I'll use a bigger bowl. And I'm going to use a pair of tongs. You could use a big fork. You could use I think I'd probably use a big fork, not a spoon, because you don't want to get extra. You want to leave the water in the pan. I'm going to turn off the heat. Then I'm going to take my bowl and put it beside the pot as I extract my noodles. Those are looking great. Something about ramen noodles. Isn't it amazing how quickly they cook? I suspect if I wasn't using instant ramen noodles, it would be an entirely different story, but because I am, they're so quick. Now, like last week, this is going to be a ramen that does not have a broth. If you've ever gone to a Japanese restaurant and you have ordered ramen, there are two different kinds you can get. Well, there's lots of kinds you can get, but there's two main categories. There's ramen that has broth and ramen that doesn't have broth. So last week, we prepared ramen that didn't have broth. We're doing the same thing again this week. So there are a couple of noodles that are still in my water. That's okay by me. I'm going to take 2 eggs. And I am going to, if you have a needle at home or if you have a pocket knife like I do, then you can pierce the bottom of your egg. If you don't worry about it. But last week we learned that when you pierce the bottom of the egg very carefully with a very small hole, and I concentrate while I do this. There we go. Then it ends up being much easier to peel the egg later on. I'm going to take a slotted spoon here. If you have one, you can use one. And I'm going to use that to place my egg in the hot water. That's not enough water. I'm going to have to add some, but that's okay. I'll do the same thing with this egg. The reason why I know I don't have enough water is that you want the water to cover the eggs. And if they don't, you have to add some. Now, last week what I did was I boiled some water in my kettle so that it would be a quick boil. This time I'm just going to use some warm water from the sink to cover my eggs. That'll do. And then I'm going to bring this back to a boil again. I need to move this in case I'm turning the wrong knob again. So this is just what happens in my apartment is sometimes the gas lights and sometimes it doesn't. There we go, that one lit, so we'll use that one. Once again, I'm going to cover it, but I'm going to leave one lip uncovered so that some of the steam can escape. In this case, that's what I want. Once I see it roll on a rolling boil again, then I'll bring down the heat and I will cover it. So I got to keep an eye on that. Okay, we left off with our garlic. So you can use 3 or 4 cloves of garlic. It depends on 2 things: how much you like garlic and how big your garlic cloves are. Mine are kind of small. That one's a good sized one, but these 3 are all kind of small, so I'm using 4 of them. Okay, so I'm going to use my bigger knife for this because I'm going to use the flat of the blade to crush the garlic in a moment. But first I'm going to chop off the top and the bottom of all 4 cloves. Trying to be as careful with my fingers as I can. It's kind of hard to use the claw technique when you're cutting something that is as small as this. Check it on the water back there, still fine. Okay, so now I'm going to put the flat of the blade on top of the garlic, and then I'm going to use my fist to crush it. That makes it easier for me to get the skin off the garlic. Back when we were in the Institute, we would talk a lot about the part of the plant that we are eating or cooking. In this case, we are cooking a root, sort of informally, because a garlic, or what we think of as being garlic, the edible part of garlic, is a bulb. And if we were to plant it, then it would grow. It would have shoots coming out of it. And before too long, it too would have a flower. Whereas we don't let it get that far. We eat it before it ever grows. So we've got our bulbs or our roots here. And then we are going to, just as we did with the ginger and the scallions, we are going to mince that. Cut it up really small. One of the things you'll hear me talk about a lot is that you get to decide how big a piece of something is based upon how you feel about the texture of it. In general, if you don't like the texture of a food, but you like the flavor of it, or you're curious about the flavor of it, then cutting it up small will introduce the flavor of the food without you having to deal with the texture. For example, some people, for reasons I do not understand, don't like the texture of mushrooms. And so when they're cooking with mushrooms, they cut them up real small. And so that way they get that really nice earthy umami flavor of a mushroom, but they don't have to deal with the texture of it. I think one more go around with the garlic here. That'll do. Perfect. Okay, let me check on my eggs. Yep, that water is boiling now. I'm going to bring it down to a low heat, and I'm going to start a 4-minute timer. 4 minutes because we are going for a soft-boiled egg, and the egg has already been sitting in very hot water, so it's already been doing some cooking. If I let it cook too much more than that, then what I would end up with is a hard-boiled egg, which wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. It's just not what we're aiming for. We'll see what happens. Last week, my egg wasn't cooked enough. It was still safe to eat, but it was very runny on the inside, which wasn't really what I was looking for. I wonder if I'll be more successful this week. One of the things that I'm going to prepare now, though, is an ice bath for the egg. The reason being, when it comes out of that hot water, we don't want it to continue cooking, and it will if it stays in the hot water, or even if it stays in room temperature water, because there's heat that is contained within the shell. So I'm going to grab, I think I'll use this bowl, why not? just a Tupperware bowl or a Rubbermaid bowl if we're being brand specific. And I'm going to go grab some ice, which I'm going to put in it. I'll be right back. If you have an ice machine, that'll save you a step. And I've got an old-fashioned ice machine called a freezer. That's probably good. Let's add some water. Probably not warm water. And just as before, I just want enough water so that when I add my eggs, it will cover the eggs. Okay, so now that we've minced all of our vegetables here, we are going to, yes, I like this part. We are going to cook them, and here's how. I'm going to take some neutral oil, in my case it's vegetable oil, but you can use whatever oil you happen to have around. And then I'm going to grab my cup measure and take a half cup of this oil. There we go. And then I am going to cook that over a medium-high heat. I'm looking for that signature white smoke or sort of shiny. I mean, to me, the oil is always shiny, but a lot of times folks will talk about how once you get it the heat that you want it to be, it sort of shimmers. You can picture whenever you're watching a movie where somebody's stranded in the desert and they look off into the middle distance, and then the heat is shimmering off the sand, which shows you, oh my gosh, this is a grim place to be. That's what they mean by shimmering oil. So you're kind of looking for that. Once it gets to that heat, we are not going to be adding anything to that oil. We're going to be adding the oil to the vegetables. So that means that we want the vegetables in a container that can withstand that heat. I'm using 2 pans right now, but I'm going to get another pan out. I don't have a glass bowl or a ceramic bowl. If I did, I would use that. Actually, I do have this Pyrex bowl. I forgot about that, so I'm going to use this. So it's just, usually I use that to contain food when I'm finished with it, but I think I'm going to see if I can use this as my main bowl. So I'm going to take my vegetables. So that's 2/3 of my scallions. I'm going to leave some scallions out because I want to top my noodles with them at the end. Ooh, look at all that ginger. That is fantastic. Okay. My watch is going off saying, James, take the eggs off the heat. Okay. I'm going to put my eggs, first of all, I'm going to drain the hot water. I'm going to use that same slotted spoon that I used to put the eggs in the water, to take them out of the water, and put them in their bath. Okay, I can hear that that oil is ready. So now I'm going to take my oil and I'm going to pour it into my glass bowl. I'm not going to talk while I do it because I want to really concentrate. This oil is hot and I don't want to get hurt. Great. Now that I have that in there, I can see that instantly it has wilted the green onions. That's what we want. I'm going to take, I think I'll use this wooden spoon here to mix everything up and make sure that that hot oil is cooking everything in the mix. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to sort of add a sauce to our vegetables, which are now cooked. I am going to take 2 tablespoons of soy sauce, and I'm going to kind of eyeball this. Mix that in there. That looks good. Oh my gosh, I love soy sauce. Instantly, I can smell that. Okay, I've got 2 tablespoons of soy sauce. Now we're going to take half a teaspoon of sugar. So I'm just going to use my sugar bowl here that I usually use for my tea. Okay. Mix that in there. I can see in my mix here that I have some scallions that I wish I chopped a little bit smaller. Oh well. One of the dangers of talking while cooking. I'm going to take 1 tablespoon of rice vinegar. Before I mentioned neutral oils, so the thing that makes vegetable oil a neutral oil is that it doesn't have a whole lot of flavor of its own. We're not using the oil to flavor anything, we are using the oil to cook the vegetables, right? Okay, so then I'm going to take 1 teaspoon of sesame oil. I'm pretty sure I've got some around. Yeah, there we go. We used this last week. And if you're wondering how I'm getting these proportions just right, the measurements just right, I'm probably not. But I've been cooking long enough at this point now that I know that I'm in the ballpark, so I'm pretty close. And I also know what I like. So I know that I like sesame oil, so I don't worry too much about whether I am getting the exact right amount. Okay, so next what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some pepper. About a teaspoon. I'm going to add some salt in a moment here too, but I'm not going to worry too much about how much salt I add. You know that usually I like a bit of salt in my food, but I'm not going to add very much this time. Just maybe half a teaspoon. And the reason why is because we already have soy sauce in there, and soy sauce is a salty ingredient. Mix that in there. Okay, and so next, we're going to add this mixture to our noodles, or you can add the noodles to the mixture, it doesn't make any difference. I want to get all of it in there. Okay, I'm going to mix that together. And if you've been thinking like, oh no, I think I had too much moisture in my sauce, I don't want you to worry too much about that. One of the nice things about noodles is that they soak up moisture like that. And also you can coat the noodles with the moisture, which gives the noodle more flavor. Okay, that's coming together. Not quite the way I want it to yet though. So I'm going to break up those noodles a bit by using a fork. What I was noticing is that my noodles were sort of clumping together, and a lot of my vegetables, or a lot of the sauce that I prepared, wasn't really getting mixed in with the noodles. There we go. That's a bit more like it. Okay, so next, I'm going to grab a bowl. This one is chipped, don't judge. And I'm going to serve up some of my noodles here. Into the bowl. I'm being careful. I'm trying to get as much of the mixture, the scallion mixture as I can. But I know that it's mainly there to flavor the noodles, so I'm not sweating it too much. If I don't see tons of greenery in there, greenery is the word I just used. If you have chili oil, you can add that to the top. I don't have chili oil, but I do have this chili garlic sauce, so I'm going to use just a little bit of that. And use my same spoon that I was using before for my ginger. There we go. And then I'm going to add as a finishing touch some sesame seeds. Let's see. Here we are. I don't think I've used this container yet, so I might have to peel off the plastic lining. Or the paper lining, sorry. Okay, there you go. Just made a big mess all over the floor. Messy kitchen, don't care. All right, so now I'm gonna take one of my 2 soft-boiled eggs and I'm gonna peel it. Okay, the moment of truth. Let's see how I did. It's easy to peel, that's good. Is the white too runny? I think it's okay. Oof, it's close. It's very, very wobbly. It's a very wobbly soft-boiled egg. I wonder if you had more luck with yours. Oh. Oh my gosh, it's so wobbly. So ordinarily, I think I would have that, but it's so wobbly, I'm going to place it down on top of my ramen. And I think that I'm going to take a sharp knife and try and have it on top of the ramen. Well, that's not so bad. It is very runny though. See, again, I think I would cook this for longer so that way the eggs had more of a chance to congeal. This is what it looks like. I swear there's no worse lighting than the lighting that you get on YouTube Live or Instagram Live. I'm sure I could light the shot better, but it just doesn't look very tasty. In my kitchen, it looks pretty good. All right, what's the fork I was using before? I don't want to dirty up something if I don't need to. Okay, here we go. First bite, let's see. I kind of mix this together a little bit. I want some of the egg in there. That looks good. Drippy sink going on. Oh, there we go. Okay, here we go. First bite. Oh, that's excellent. It's really subtle. Oh, there's a bit of the heat from the ginger, because I have a lot of ginger in mine. Yep. Oh, I love that. That is great. And what I would probably add to that is sometimes you can get some pork belly, you know, when you go to a Japanese restaurant. And that's all it's missing. Everything else is there, but that. Yeah, that tastes great to me. That tastes more like the ramen that I'm used to eating. Last week when we made the pesto for the ramen, I really liked it a lot. It was delicious, but it was a very different take on ramen. This is a lot closer to what I'm used to, and I like it a lot. I'm really curious to hear about how the creations of our home chefs turned out, particularly if they received groceries at home this week and gave it a try using those ingredients. So if you tried this at home this week, I hope that you will take a moment to take a picture or maybe even a video of what you've created and share it with us at Project Success on Instagram, or you can email it to me at jamesr@projectsuccess.org. If you send it to programs@projectsuccess.org, that'll work too. You can even text me something if you want to, if you happen to have that number. I'm not just going to give it out on social media, but if you have it, then you can use that too. So I think I'll sign off. I'm just going to check quickly to see if there are any questions that anybody has. So let's see. See some thank yous. That's all very nice, very polite. Okay, and I'm going to check my chat here on YouTube Live if I can find it again. I minimized it. Okay, got a hi everyone. How are they supposed to look like? Yeah, it's tough, isn't it? You can't really see everything that's inside the containers that I'm working on just because we have these single camera setups here. So I'm kind of interested in how they turned out for you. If it looked like mine or if it looked really different, I'm good with it either way. Remember, the stakes could not be lower when we're preparing food for ourselves. You know, if we don't end up loving it, that's okay. We learn something. The next time we prepare it, we'll prepare it differently. I know the ways that I will prepare this differently next time. I'll cook my eggs a little bit longer. I'm going to prepare more of the sauce and less of the noodles. And I think that I would maybe look for an extra protein that I would add as well, either tofu or maybe I would use the pork belly that I mentioned before. So thank you so much for watching. If you watched this evening, if you didn't watch this evening, then you're not hearing this. So not thank you to you. I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening. Please come back next week and cook with us. If you're part of the Project Success Certificate Program and you'd like to have some groceries delivered to you with the ingredients that we will use for next week's recipe, let me know about that. We may not be able to do it for everybody all in 1 week, but we can definitely cycle through everybody in the class. I really believe we can do that. Maybe like 3 students at a time each week. It's a kind of a fun surprise, I imagine, to have groceries show up at your doorstep that you can then use later on in the week. So that's it from me. Goodbye. I hope you all are doing well, or as well as you can be doing during these very strange times, and I will see you next week. Bye, everybody.